Hey guys, and welcome to another video. For this one, we're going to be talking about the Druid. Now, as you may be aware, TwitchCon is on, and it's in full swing already, even though it's only just Friday. They have a lot of big stuff that they're going to be showing us. They've revealed, at least for now, a whole heap of things already. Currently, as I record, they are doing some live performances with McLean Dima and company, showing off some of the Heart of Thorn stuff, or maybe some alternate versions. It's really fantastic. And we've already had several shows already come out, but specifically, I want to talk about the Druid in this video. They're trying to change stuff. So the Druid is a very specifically healing-based, support-based class. It's the third we've seen. We've already had the Herald, and we've already had the Tempest, kind of trying to do those same things. This idea that each armor class, they were going to add an elite specialization that would go for it, very much seems to have been true. And now, unfortunately, to me, just seeing that this thing exists doesn't necessarily tell me we need it. So I'm not super excited. Now, don't get me wrong, it's got some good ideas, but this specific idea that it's supposed to be heavy support does cripple it from the offset, because ArenaNet still haven't talked to us about how they intend to make support have a place. So this live stream was special in a number of ways. First of all, it wasn't hosted from ArenaNet's office, it was hosted from TwitchCon, so they rushed through things far quicker, and some things they, you had to really pay quite close attention to figure out how they work before they then went on. But also, it started with kind of a bit of a discussion from Kalman, who was giving us this presentation, as he did with the Scrapper 2, about why this build is something we should be excited about. And specifically, he said, and as far as I know, recently, this is the first time we've heard the devs say something like this, he said that the Zerka meta days are over. He said that they weren't happy, they didn't feel it was healthy for the game. This is actually in line with my opinion too. I feel if we were in a environment for Guild Wars 2 where many more than just one stat type or the heavy glass stat types were seeing used, people would end up playing the game for a lot longer because they'd be more excited about trying different builds, which feel more distinct, and obviously then they spend more time working for that extra ascended armor. I've always been very much in favor of this idea, and I've also hoped that should we be in a situation where we care about stat sets that don't lean for DPS much at all, or builds that don't lean for it much at all, and it feels much more like that kind of raw, healy, supporty character rather than just DPS characters that have a bit of that angle on them, we could see some more interesting gameplay come out too. Now, the last thing I said is definitely a point of contention for some people. Some people are very entrenched in the way Guild Wars 2 works right now, and they kind of say, yeah, what, you're going to tell people to build tanky, and that's just going to make it boring, less Twitch-based gameplay, and that's not fun, that's not skill-based. There's a lot of discussions there, right? ArenaNet have always sat on the sidelines, and they've never really been very clear. They have kind of come out with some vague comments recently and said, oh, with Raids, you're going to maybe want to dust off some of that toughness gear. But here we have a dev straight full on saying, yeah, we don't think it's healthy and we don't want Zerking to be the be-all and end-all. So what does this actually mean, though? I like their intentions, but I still have no confidence that they will actually pull this off. The thing that scares me the most is that they come up with a Druid here, and they tell us, yeah, we're not going to have the Zerk meta. So instead, check it out. We're giving you a full-on healing elite specialization. And all they've done on the specialization itself is there are some supporty forms of utility. There is some capacity to sort of reflect or at least negate projectiles. There is some method to give a bit of super speed. There's some method to give a little bit of stealth. These are supporty things, but really all they've done is they've said, have some healing, 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 healing. They've put healing on every skill and every trait and every friggin' utility skill. Healing is everywhere. And they seem to think that's the answer. And it is absolutely not the answer. Kalman said at the start of the stream that you will simply not be able to just dodge damage, and, healings presumably is going to have something more of a place, but I really feel like ArenaNet are missing a trick. I wasn't particularly excited about this elite specialization. I've done a video before, and we will talk more about this later in the week, about why just raw healing does not cut it. It is unrewarding to play, it is outclassed by active mitigation, and it is not necessary. So far, I only really see this being super relevant for world versus world, where healing on pretty much every skill is pretty cool, because you can run around in your Zerg, and every time you activate a different ability, because they're all like doing healing somewhere or another, it's going to skip the people who are already at 100% and then hit the people in the 5 target cap around you. So I do see it may see some use there, but for the PvE content and the new PvE content, I'm waiting out, man. I'm waiting out, because I don't think, just based on what we've seen on the Druid on its own, that we actually have to run this. I think we'll see people still running very similar stuff to what we already have. And even on the world versus world topic, there's the age-old example of, hey, why don't we just drop a water field and blast it? And oh, look, we're at 100% health anyway, and we don't need the Druid. Woo! So, yeah. Anyway, so moving on, I will try to keep that discussion now out of this video. Let's look at the Druid as if it is magically in a place where Guild Wars 2 wants that, and this kind of non-Zerka meta idea does become a thing, and let's view it on its own merits, because while it does have a lot of healing, and you can kind of sum this elite specialization up as them saying, let's add healing everywhere. While you can do that, there are some nice things. There's a way of buffing damage for your allies flat, a lot like Frost Spirit. There's a way of pulling, there's a way of stealthing, there's a way of getting basically permanent swiftness, and there are some flavorful things to look at in addition to just the raw healing aspects. So, let's jump into it. There was no live gameplay at all here. These clips were a lot shorter. It definitely struck me that with all the pretty new animations they were showing, of which, by the way, the Staff 2 we saw in the original trailer does remain, it really struck me that they need a better place to show this off than Heart of the Mist. I mean, come on, yeah, I know that there's the golems there. I'm seriously hoping now, as days go by, that the guild halls they introduce do add, like, infinite golem decoration so people can use that for utility, and the devs have got a prettier, better-looking place to show off their new content, because, you know, this is advertisement for Heart of Thorns, and they're constantly showing it off in, like, this really dull, mundane area. They should just revamp Heart of the Mist as it is. This elite specialization, to me, could be falling very much into the same trap that the Dragon Hunter did, in that it adds a ton of stuff, but none of it really, I don't know, I mean, yes, you can take a nature magic, and, you know, maybe wilderness survival ranger, but there isn't that much excitement, again, for me, with synergy between this new elite spec and how it kind of ties into the other specs that the ranger get. I think that could be a problem, but Calman, again, at the end of the stream did say, look, we've seen a lot of problems with the ranger community, specifically in PvP, you really don't see that much ranger use at the very high level at the moment, and he was kind of saying, look, there are going to be some big balance changes too, and apparently that's also going to be detailed at TwitchCon. It's, as the time of this recording, that's not been given to us yet. Apparently there are going to be a lot of other big balance changes they'll be discussing, and core ranger functionalities are being improved. While we're talking about core ranger as well, the thing that truly stole the show for me on this Druid livestream didn't have anything to do with the Druid, but it was the new ranger pets they've announced. There are going to be 5 new pets. A lot of the footage you're going to be seeing in my video here is of one of them, that's the tiger, but then they did specifically, as you can see now, roll through some of the other pets that are available. And yes, they are some of the most badass ambient creatures we've seen already in the betas. So, remember those smoke scales, those things that would do basically unrelenting assault against you and wreck you, or they would stand in their big damn smoke fields and you were supposed to get them out but you had no way of getting them out, and they'd evade a ton of stuff. Those guys, smoke scales, are going to be a pet, and they have the same abilities. Bristlebacks, which we haven't actually seen in the beta so far, I believe, with this really high pressure, fast ranged projectiles that do lots of bleeds. Bristlebacks will also be, what do you know, one of the ranger's pets, complete with a full complement of abilities. It gets crazy on that though. You will get adolescent wyverns, or baby wyverns as they've described them, and these guys do also get all their abilities. So you get the electric one and the fire one. Who remembers what the fire ones did? Yeah, this thing will take off, fly in a giant circle, and drop a massive, obnoxious fire field on the ground. That's right, fire field. So it's actually got some really good functionality and utility on it too. So the pets were awesome. You don't have to elite specialize for them. You just head to the jungle and you get to, you know, press F and interact with them. So the art we saw, the teaser at the start of the week for the Druid, kind of suggesting we might get an oak heart as a pet or something like that, didn't seem to be a thing. And in fact, in terms of new pet mechanics, pet synergies, pet changes, things that make the pet feel better because it's such, you know, a controversial part of the Ranger, something that I came to expect we would get on the Druid, whether it's something completely extreme and ridiculous, like you can run over to your pet, press F, and for a short time you can ride it, or, you know, some of these other early ideas of mind controlling a pet. None of that stuff happened at all. In fact, they mentioned nothing about base pet changes. Maybe this is what we're looking forward to in the next stream. They talk nothing about any changes to the way druids will control their pets. Pets are just kind of there and really don't mean anything. There's not even like any new super supportive pets being added in Heart of Thorns in the jungle that also complement the support playstyle that the druid is supposed to give us. So that's kind of interesting, and maybe that elaborates quite well why I feel that the druid doesn't slot too comfortably into the ranger as it currently exists. So, what did they do for the unique mechanic? If they didn't do any of the really interesting stuff that we thought they might have done, I absolutely think that this class was gutted and very quickly built quite recently. The unique mechanic instead is essentially a shroud. Think of Death Shroud, think of Reaper Shroud, think of being able to charge that shroud not through life force, but instead through healing. As you heal allies, you gain this resource, and then you can toggle into this shroud, or it's called Celestial Form, okay? While you're in this Celestial Form, you get 5 new abilities that you can activate as you like. The form looks like this. I mean, it's fairly pretty. Not really on par, in my opinion, with Reaper Shroud, not on par with what I was expecting if they were going to get some kind of a transform. It does go into this idea of druids that transform, and essentially what this does is it gives you 5 hyper-powered support abilities while you are in it. So let's have a look at those before we look at the staff. Number 1 is like a Jesus beam, 1200 range, ground-targeted beam that you strike the floor with, and it heals 5 targets. The skill 2 is on a ridiculously short cooldown, and it summons a seed to the ground, which will heal and cleanse nearby allies of their conditions. That is tuned very high, by the way. A Condi cleanse on such a short cooldown is pretty ridiculous. The skill 3, you cool down another giant beam that also heals, but this one also pulses dazes. That's nice. That does play into the support playstyle, and they talked actually about a bit of synergy with getting through break bars. So 3 heal skills already. Is that enough? Well, you got Tide Surge, another ability that heals allies. This gathers tidal forces that will rapidly heal allies, and this one also drops a water field. Water fields, by the way, are ample healing all on their own in the game at the moment, and you don't need all of these other skills, but maybe that's a discussion for another video. And actually, animation for this, because it's on a bit of a delay like the other ones, this allows allies to move in, and that's really important for these kinds of abilities. And then finally, you got the skill 5 in your Celestial form, and this is called Natural Convergence. And what this does is it incapacitates your foes. Now, Cowman said it applies bleed, while the tooltip and the demonstration in-game didn't show it applying bleed. So what this probably means is it does bleed now. It didn't on that earlier build, as what the devs say is usually a more up-to-date version of the skill. But what we saw was it crippling, applying slow, and immobilize. So these aren't really damaging condis, except the bleed that may be getting added. But what these things do is they really help to reduce the amount of damage that's incoming on you. And this is one of the very few examples of proactive or, you know, damage mitigation rather than raw healing that the Druid gets. And that's pretty much your form. Lots of heals, heals. All right, so we'll come back to that in a second because there's an additional functionality related to your utility skills. But let's have a look at the staff now. So again, we've got another 5 skills that will be appearing on the left of your skill bar. You've got the skill 1, actually looked like it was doing really high damage, which was pretty interesting, called the Solar Beam. You've got the skill 2 called Astral Wisp, which summons a little thing that moves around and heals people, very Revenant-ish. You've got the skill 3, yeah, I'm whizzing through these, Ancestral Grace, which is a huge movement ability, a 1200 range gap close, and when you land, it has a massive burst heal. This is a lot like the Dragon Hunter's F2, but just kind of amped up like mad. This is an immense range. So that looks pretty exciting, and again, stuff like this that moves you quickly to an area and then pulses the heal around you is better than some of the other things we've had, like ground-targeted heals that you seem to see. Then you got the skill 4. This is Vine Surge. This is what we saw in the original trailer. This sends forth vines that will immobilize enemies and cleanse condis from allies. So the animation is kind of pretty, but basically this is very much like a staff skill we already see, say, Elementalist, Earth 5. Very similar, except it's got that kind of supportive tangent to it, where it will cleanse condis as well as it moves through allies. And then finally, you've got the skill 5, and this is probably the most interesting new skill that I think they've added on the entire class, beyond, you know, these awesome pet abilities. Sublime Conversion does this. It's a line, kind of like a wall of reflection that you can drop down. But when a projectile comes at it, instead of reflecting the projectile, what it does is transfer the damage that projectile would do into healing. Now, my first interpretation of this was that it would be like a one-for-one thing. Think about Defiant Stance or something, right? So, like, if you look at your old buddy Killshot, and you're low on health, the Killshot Warrior fires it, it goes through the wall that you placed cheekily, and it hits you. Instead of doing 14,000 damage, it will heal you for 14,000 damage, right? That'd be amazing. Well, it's actually not the same. It looks like it's a flat amount of healing. There's something else on the Druid as well in a second. And what that means is this is actually going to favor when you're faced with lots of low damage projectiles that come in. You'll get more healing rather than like an individual big one. At least that's from what I can tell from the tooltip. And if you put that into like a 10-man scenario with the raids, if you put that into, you know, 5-man scenario with the high-scaled fractals, that's actually a reasonable way of basically nullifying projectile damage. But the thing is it better than a reflect? In the current state of the game where you can rally and it doesn't really matter if you go down, a wall of reflection still is probably better because you get through the content quicker because you kill stuff while also still supporting because people are getting rallied. So again, this is discussion I want to do for later, but there you go. So that's the skill 5 and I think it is a really cool idea. Let's look at the right hand side of the skill bar. So they are getting glyphs. This was confirmed. I'm happy to say we got one right, guys. One of our predictions, glyphs. So why are they glyphs? Well, the only other class we see glyphs so far is on the Elementalist, and depending on your attunement for the Elementalist, the glyphs change their functionality. That's the same for the Druid too. The Druid has their glyphs in their regular form, and then when they go into their Celestial form, they also get a new ability on that glyph. So we'll talk about the regular ones first. So first of all, the heal is Glyph of Rejuvenation, and this kind of heals you for a lot base and a medium amount for your allies around you. And it will get more interesting when we see its alternate version. The Glyph of Alignment, this is one of the regular utilities you can pick, does damage and applies conditions to enemies. And these damage, once again, are incapacitating ones, not damaging condies. Cripple and Weakness. Weakness incredibly strong. Again, that's decent mitigation. The animation is kind of like the earth is exploding around them, kind of an interesting idea. You've got Glyph of Equality, and this is more days. So this is days on 5 targets for 2 seconds around you, and actually is one of the very few examples of high base damage on this class. It's almost got 1,000 base damage. And they've gone so heavily with so much of this elite specialization on support. It seems really weird that suddenly there's a high base damage ability there. But yeah, Glyph of Equality, days, and then a lot of damage at 300 radius, which is fairly big. You've got Glyph of the Tides, which has kind of got this splash animation. This is just a big knockback, 360 radius, AoE for everyone around you. A bit of manipulation. Again, that one gets more interesting when you see its alternate version. You've got Glyph of Empowerment. This will combo with your Frost Spirit, and we may see some use. Glyph of Empowerment increases the outgoing damage of your nearby allies by 10% flat for 5 seconds when you activate, and it's got a fairly short cooldown. So this is kind of like when you get your own standard content streams, when you get your Ice Block, when you get your Time Warp on you, when you have your 25 Might, your 25 Vuln, and you're about to use your Ice Storm or whatever, you're going to have your Druid pop Glyph of Empowerment, and it will buff your damage even further. And so, you know, you can take Frost Spirit plus Glyph of Empowerment and kind of up the ante a little bit there. It's kind of like, hey, we're about to burst, let's support our offense. And then lastly, you got the Elite, and this is Glyph of Unity. And what this does is it tethers to foes around you. So you've got the Necromancer Death Shroud 5, right? Your regular one. You've got the Dragon Hunters F1 on their spears. These are tether abilities. While you're tethered to those foes, if they damage you, they get damage splashed back at them, a flat amount. They get damage splashed back, damage splashed back. To me, I mean, it fits. It's a supporty kind of thing. But again, this is one of those funny things. I don't know how much I obsess over this, but doesn't this totally, 100,000% sound like this should be a Jarless Retribution trait? Like, honestly, it's basically like or even if it's kind of on Guardian, any class with a lot of retail, so you can combo it with retail, and, you know, you can feel like you're building multiple things into your character that meet the same aim. And it's just kind of here on Druid, but okay, it's a pretty interesting elite. So these are the glyphs, though, and now we get another version of the glyph when we go into our new form. But so let's have a look at them again, shall we? And do consider that you won't always have all these glyphs on your bar. But let's assume, you know, you've stacked up on them. So the heal before was a high packet of healing to you and medium to your allies. They switch it, they reverse it. So now it's high healing to allies and medium to you. I really like that. I think that's a cool idea. And I don't think we see any real example of just a raw heal skill that does something like that. You know, before on the Tempest, they were talking about how they had a heal skill, because the Tempest is kind of the support elite specialization. They had a heal that did the same to you, to your allies, and they talked about that being a novel thing. This is a heal that does more to your allies and less to you. And I'm sure that's new. You've got the Glyph of Alignment next, and before that was doing condies to enemies, you know, the weakness and the cripple. Instead, now it removes condies from your allies. And as you'll notice, there's already a lot of Condi Cleanse, though. The skill 2 has Condi Cleanse, so are we really going to care that much about this glyph? It was never really talked about. The devs blitzed through this faster than I am. Trust me, guys. The next was Glyph of Empowerment. This is the one that would regularly increase your allies' damage output. Well, now what it does is it increases your allies' healing output. So that's the reverse-aroo there. I absolutely don't think that this is powerful enough. Like a 10% buff, you know, that's nothing. It really isn't that important to me. But thematically, I like the idea of the reverse on that one. You got Glyph of Tides. This one will see use in theory. This is good. This is decent support here. Knocks back before. Now it's a pull in. And that pull in is very useful. You need that for balling enemies. And, you know, if LOS becomes significantly harder to pull off because of new AI, abilities like this will be cherished. But again, that one actually has some fairly nice use on it too. And then lastly, we've got the Elite Glyph of Unity. Unless I've missed one. I feel like I might have missed one. But we got Glyph of Unity. Before, the Elite was tethering you to enemies and splashing the damage back, right? Well, now it tethers you to allies. And whenever you get healed, it splashes that healing out to them too. So the idea here, guys, is you will go into your Celestial form, toggle the Elite, tether to all your allies, then use your heal skill, and you'll buff the healing out to them like massively, and so many of your abilities do heal, so that's pretty good, and you'll see some further synergy on the traits too, which we'll get into in just 1 second. So that's kind of the core functionality of the Druid. Nothing particularly flavorful. There is some stuff in there that I quite like the sound of, but nothing particularly flavorful, specifically like with its core mechanic. It just kind of feels like another Shroud to me, and I don't know, maybe I'm a little bit tired of that kind of thing, but we will see how much place specifically it has in the game. Particularly, I would love a stream from the devs or a blog post from the devs or something. I get that they don't want to tip off to people the way that their open world content is going to work, or their raids are going to work, or the high scale fractures are going to work, which ultimately are the only content areas that they can actually eventually design, you know, something heavily supporty like this in PvE working. I get that they might not want to tip people off early, but I think if they want to instill any confidence in us that this will have a place, I would really like to see a post like that. But hey, Heart of Thorns is less than a month away now, and they have confirmed that, you know, if elite specializations aren't seeing use or like have very low balance, they're going to be monitoring that even after the game calms out, and that's going to be like a high focus for them. And given how active the balance devs seem to have been, and specifically Calman in the stream talked a lot about how, you know, he's looking at a lot at Druid now, and now that it's open, he can talk about it a lot more. I do have confidence that eventually, one way or another, Druid will have a place in PvE. Alright guys, so let's finish this off by looking at the traits. I'm going to wrap through these very quickly. For the minors, one of them means whenever you heal an ally, you get healed a little for yourself too, which basically means you're always going to like aim to get benevolent stuff on this class, because healing others and then you're getting that flat health as well as another minor, which basically gives you a sigil of benevolence. So whenever you heal someone, you get a stack, and that stack gives you 2% benevolence, and it goes up to 10 times, so that's another 20% benevolence, a lot like basically what we saw with the Revenant Ventari, right? Like, I feel like I'm going to be repeating a lot of that kind of stuff. Adept slot, you've got 3 things competing. Number 1, Druidic Clarity, which will remove all conditions on you when you go into the form. It's listed on the tooltip that it removes 13 conditions, and I suppose that's true, but it's not going to do that every time. You've got the, or you can take Cultivated Synergy, which is whenever you use a heal, that heal skill will heal allies around you. And don't forget as well, when you are a ranger, you have a pet. And when you use a heal skill, not only do you get healed, but the pet gets that ability too. And this trait actually synergizes with that. So if you have your pet next to you at your heal, and you toggle into the new form, and then you use the elite, and then you use the heal, you're just getting, like, ungodly amounts of healing, okay? Like, the number is just ridiculous. But the thing is, we don't actually play characters with that much vitality where that's relevant, right? People are... It doesn't matter if you do that if they're about to get one shot. But it's so hard to not run into these discussions. Or lastly, you've got Primal Echoes. Primal Echoes was actually a Guild Wars 1 spirit skill, so I was really happy to see this here. And this is kind of your staff trait, which drops the cooldowns on them, and it gives you an AoE daze when you swap to staff. I think this is pretty interesting because I think they probably wanted this as a sigil for a long time. You know, it's basically like Geomancy or Doom, but they figured that the daze was too strong. So now we actually finally see them add it as a trait. Moving on to the Master Tier. You do have some pretty cool utility here. When you leave the form, you can gain stealth and super speed for your team. That's useful, that's nice. That's the kind of support we currently see is used a lot. And it's nice to see something that's not just flat healing. You've got Verdant Etching, which is your Glyph trait, reduces the Glyph cooldowns. And then whenever you use a Glyph, it plants one of those seeds we heard about before, which again heals and cleanses, so even more Condi Cleanse. Or you can take Natural Stride, which basically, and this is pretty cool, is basically swiftness. At all times. Alright, so basically, you get 33% movement speed, except if you have Chill or Cripple and Mobilize on you, at which case you don't get the 33% movement speed. But don't worry, because this trait also reduces the duration of those. And don't worry, because you're a Druid and you have Condi Cleanse out the ass as it is. So, that's a first, and that's pretty exciting too. And then lastly, we've got the Grandmasters. Grace of the Land, whenever you enter the Celestial form, you reduce incoming condition damage for you and your allies by 1/3, just straight up. So even if you didn't have all this crazy cleanse, which you do, so I feel like this Grandmaster sort of loses a bit of its luster, you reduce the incoming condition damage that everyone's getting struck by a lot. It really makes it sound like they're going to have a lot of Condis in Heart of Thorns, but so far from what we've seen of the betas, I'm just not seeing too much. And again, I will remind you guys of that discussion we had a long time ago where, you know, burning got changed and a lot of Condi stuff seemed quite powerful. First of all, a lot of the dust on that has settled anyway as people have learned how to counterplay many things. But further, I did mention, you know, don't be so scared when you see a lot of Condi cleanse, and that's still very much relevant today. The second Grand Master is another raw heal one, Lingering Light. He kind of talked about this as an idea of like a ranged way of healing people. So if you heal someone, it creates a wisp that will orbit around you. And then whenever that wisp touches someone, it also heals them as well. Again, very Revenant-ish. And they kind of gave the idea that because you've got 1200 range on your staff, this is you allowing you to be that back range healer, and other ranged characters can sort of cluster around you if they want, not too close, so they're also getting AoE'd in yours, but they can cluster around you and they can get those heals from those orbs. We'll see whether that works, because it will also work in melee. And then lastly, you've got Ancient Seeds. This is kind of like your entangling roots for the Druid. If you strike someone who's stunned, dazed, or knocked down, it will summon roots that then entangle them, and we all know what entangling roots do. And that one, I think, could be pretty fun to play with in PvP. So there you go, guys. That's the Druid. I tried so hard to make this a short video, and the recording, at least, is still half an hour long. So let me know what you think. I think there is some cool flavor here, but do consider just what healing means for PvE. This video has been very PvE focused, of course, but do consider what exactly that means, and really hold out hope that there's a place for it, because just slapping a ton on absolutely is not the answer to anyone's problems, okay? Like, I'm really hoping for that information from ArenaNet. Like, in general, I think the community is really enjoying the Druid, and that's great, but do have that ounce of skepticism in you. And I wonder whether you guys think that I'm overblowing that or not. But so let's have a discussion about that down below. I'd love to read, and I'll keep you guys posted with way more TwitchCon stuff. Thanks very much for watching. Busy, busy, busy. I'll see you next episode.